Hello chess friends and welcome to Chesslovers channel. In my earlier clips I have mainly focused on what I believe are the 20 best chess books to help a chess player develop his or her chess understanding. And my number one choice was the book I'm holding in my hand here, My System, written by Nimzowitsch. And the reason I recommended this book was because this is the only book in the whole of chess literature that a strong world elite chess player reveals his utmost inner secrets. We are talking about such concepts as overprotection and prophylaxis. And behind this book we have another great book, which you can see here, My Praxis, chess praxis. So you should preferably read both these books to get a more complete picture of Nimzowitsch. There is even a third one I can recommend, Blockade, also written by him. And this book he actually wrote before these two books. Anyway, My System is clearly number one choice, and we will go on. Another book with algebraic notation is this one, Lasker's Chess Manual of Chess. And in this book you will have a very thorough description of Wilhelm Steinitz' classical chess theories, complemented by Lasker's own theories. And behind this book we have this one, Common Sense in Chess. Both these books are new edition, 21st century editions. But these books are on different levels. I would say that this book is mainly for beginner or club player, while this book is even meant to be for elite players. Clearly number one choice, because Lasker also revealed a lot of his chess understanding to the chess community. And here we have my third selection, Modern Ideas in Chess, written by Richard Réti. As you can see, this is also a new edition, written in algebraic notation. And behind this book we have Masters of the Chessboard. So that book is written in the same tradition. So while Nimzowitsch describes prophylactic chess and Lasker classical chess, this book describes chess history in the perspective of how chess ideas, strategical chess ideas, has evolved in chess history from around Adolf Andersen to Alexander Alekhine. My fourth selection is the middle game books written by Max Euwe. And the first book is focused on static features and the second on dynamic and subjective features. These books will teach you all aspects of the middle game and is the best middle game book you can get, describing the middle game in both static and dynamic features. However, we have books by Pachman, so if you don't have access to the books by Euwe, you can also read Pachman's complete chess strategy in 3 books. Unfortunately, I don't have the front page, as you can see, and this is probably the book I have read the most. However, there is another edition you can read, a kind of abbreviation, but some games are you can find here, you cannot find in complete chess strategy. So it's essentially another book. But if you don't have access to the 3 books by Pachman, you can read Modern Chess Strategy. by the same author. But in my opinion, you should read the 3 books by Pachman or the books by Max Euwe, because you need to learn a lot about the middle game. Now we come to selection number 6 by me, and it's a book written by Dvoretsky, Secrets of Chess Training. And behind this book we have Secrets of Chess Tactics. He has written many more books, but these are for me his 2 main choices, and that is because I have studied these books very thoroughly. So I recommend this book first, but remember, this book is for high-level students who have aspirations to become international masters or even international grandmaster. So I would recommend this book for FIDE masters around 2300 ELO. So the lower the ladder you are, the more challenging this book will be, because it's very challenging on 2300 ELO level. But you will learn how to calculate variations in depth. Extremely good book. And my 7th choice is Chess Fundamentals by Capablanca, the 3rd world champion after Steines and Lasker. And he is by many, also me, regarded as the greatest chess genius in chess history. So of course you must read his books, and this is one of them, the most recommendable one, and Botvinnik also agrees that this is the most recommendable one. However, you should also complement it with his 2 other books, a primer of chess and My Chess Career. But unfortunately, for those of you who don't like descriptive notation, this book has not been, so to speak, translated from algebraic to descriptive notation. But as I have recommended before, don't be afraid of descriptive notation, because it will slow down your chess thinking, which means you will learn more and you will be more objective, because you must think from White's perspective as well as Black's perspective when you are dealing with descriptive notation. So you should really assimilate the books by Capablanca, especially Chess Fundamentals. Now we come to the 8th choice of mine, and that is The Middle Game book by Euwe Znosko-Borovsky. And this is, in my opinion, his best book. He has written many others, for example, a book about combinations, which I can also recommend. But the book behind him for now is this one, How Not to Play Chess. And as you can see, I have read a lot in that book. So while this book is mainly dealing with, anyway, what has impressed me with this book is how he deals with the main concepts, time, force, and space. But in this book we can also read about how to evaluate different positions in 3 different ways: subjective analysis, mechanical analysis, and dynamic analysis. So this would be my 2nd recommendation if we are concentrating on this great author, Znosko-Borovsky. My 9th choice is a book by Flear, and the title says Practical Endgame Play Beyond the Basics. So this is perhaps not a middle game book, but it deals with multi-piece endings. And we also have to deal with transitions from middle game to end game. Because when you're dealing with multi-piece endings as well as late middle games, you have to know how to exchange pieces. That is a very important theme. The more pieces you have, which pieces to exchange and which pieces not to exchange. So in this book he's dealing with endings where you have, for example, queen rook versus queen and rook. And this is a rare genre. So my recommendation, if you want to read another book in the same genre, would be this one, Mastering Complex Endgames, written by Adrian Mikhailishin and Oleg Stetsko. And in this book you can also find this ending, queen rook versus queen rook, and many other multi endgames, because this is an important area in chess. And if we want to have an edge against our opponents, we have to read books they don't read. We have to focus on themes they don't focus on. Perhaps they only focus on opening variations or solving tactical puzzles. Then we will get an edge if we focus on what is really important in chess, and that is positions that will arise in our games. We must be prepared for everything, not only tactical tricks and opening variation, but also for example, unusual but important endings. We must know the technique, how to apply the strategy and tactics. My 10th recommendation has been this book by David Bronstein, where he discusses Znosko-Borovsky tournament, the candidate tournament played in 1953, where the world's strongest contenders were fighting each other. And this was a very interesting period in chess, the 1950s, because it was this period they were more critical of the classical theories, and chess became more dynamic. So what constitutes a weakness? And you might say in a condensed form that a weakness is only a weakness if it can be effectively attacked. But Bronstein's comments are unique, and I can recommend all books by Bronstein. But I can also recommend another book about this tournament written by Miguel Najdorf. So it's a very smart idea, I think, to compare how does Bronstein annotate the games compared to Najdorf and vice versa. So you should have both these books, in my opinion, to get a more objective picture of the games that were played. So now we have discussed so far the 10th best books, and now we come to my 11th choice. And if you remember, it was this book, Endgame Strategy, written by Shereshevsky. And you might say that this book is in the same tradition as the book by Flear I recommended before, but this one is more focused on typical themes and typical positions. For example, how to play with the bishop pair, how to play against an isolated pawn. But what impressed me most with this book was how to play against two weaknesses. He has written some other books, if you are interested in this, Mastering the Endgame. And volume 1 of his, From the Open and Semi-Open Games, and volume 2, From the Closed Games. So that is a very clever way to classify different opening play in the traditional Tartakower. So I certainly recommend all books by Shereshevsky, who is a great trainer. My number 12th selection is Hans Kmoch's Pawn Power in Chess. And this book was published in 1959, but this book, called Die Kunst der Bauernführung, was published in 1956. And in my opinion, this book is probably slightly better because it's more detailed and longer than the American edition. And Kmoch has written in his preface to the American edition that these books are not the same. So I actually recommend both. But I know if you have problem with German, you can concentrate on this one. The main idea with this book is that he's focusing on pawn formation, and books about pawn formations are very rare. I don't know any other book, because other books either focus on pawn structures or pawn structures in the opening, and a pawn structure in the opening can extend into the middle game and even to the end game. I'm thinking, for example, about the Karlsbad variation in the Queen's Gambit defense, where you play c takes d5 and black responds e takes d5. There you get a pawn structure where you often play the minority attack and try to make a pawn on c6 isolated and backward. We will not go into detail now. I just want to explain the difference between pawn structure and pawn formation. So then we are dealing with a pawn structure, Karlsbad structure. But the formation, I will explain on the chessboard what we mean by that. So here you can see a position I saw yesterday when I was watching Felix Blueberg's channel, because he has started a series about rook endings, and this is part 1, how to exploit an extra pawn when it's located on the D file. And you can see here that black has a pawn formation with pawns on f7, g6 and h5. So this is a pawn formation. So a pawn formation has to do with defense, for example, and it does not need to be connected to the opening at all. And normally this structure is the best defensive structure. But in this case, it's very interesting that Felix Blueberger, the Austrian grandmaster, recommends to play f6 to control the e5 square and the g5 square, so the white king does not have access to that square. But it's also important that the rook does not have access to the e5 square, because if it would be white's move here, then rook e5 check followed by rook e3 could result that the white kings has access to the squares on d5 and d4 in front of the pawn, and then white has winning chances. So f6 is a very important move, because it will prevent both white's rook and king from improving their position. So if black plays like this, a pawn formation with pawns on f6, g6, h5, it does not matter if white manages to win the pawn on g6 in the future in exchange for the d3 pawn, because the position will be drawn anyway. So I hope you understand now why Hans Kmoch's book is so important. It's the only book dealing with pawn formations.